Hey YouTube, it's Min here, and since Autumn Championship for 2023 is coming up within like the next month, I think I'm gonna make a tier list on the legends to see what are the good picks for this supposed meta. And to start off the bat, I am not a pro player, I am just a Valhalla player. I haven't even made top 32 in a major yet, so you can take this with a grain of salt. I spend most of my time playing in the mid to high diamond range, but rarely ever go up against pro players. And if I do, I usually get eliminated by them in the tournaments. But this is my perspective on the tier list from where I stand. So let's get started. Okay, so I actually broke the tier list into four tiers. The top tier being the powerful picks, which means that you're probably going to have a pretty overtuned kit if you go with the characters in this tier list as your main, which means you'll probably have a very good chance at topping the event, and it just probably doesn't take as much effort compared to the other tiers. For the second tier in orange, we have very good picks, which is basically slightly overtuned, but it's going to take a bit of more work compared to the top tier characters. And for viable picks, they're just balanced characters that you can definitely top with, but you're going to have to put in some work in order to know the ins and outs of like matchups and the intricacies of spacing and stuff like that. And the underdog tier is basically for stuff that I think should get buffed. And if you are remaining them and using them in tournaments, you're probably going to have to put in a lot of time and effort into mastering this character if you're going to go far at all. So, starting off for the powerful picks, in my opinion, let's see. Tezca is definitely a powerful pick. His stats are really good. You can adapt his stats to whatever you want. Boots is good because you can easily win neutral with it. It has good priority, good startup frames, recovery frames, all of that. He just struggles with killing, but his SIGs are very good, so you don't have to worry about that as much. His really only weakness is that he's a very close range type of character, so if you can't get in against like scythe and like spear and bow and stuff like that, you'll struggle. But if you have a good offstage game and you can land his dunking sigs, you should excel with Tezca no problem. Now let's see who else. Okay, I'm gonna put Red Raptor up here as well. Basically the same suit as Tezca, but except with slightly worse stats because he is he's got above average stats in everything but defense. But if you use defense, you're stuck with 5 speed. So that's the only downfall for Red Raptor. But he does have insane SIGs. Orb is debatably better than Gauntlets, but the stats are weaker, so I'll put him there. His Boots neutral SIG really carries his kit, though. And the motorcycle side SIG on Orb is definitely nothing to underestimate at all. Red Raptor does struggle against the similar matchups as Tezca does, because playing Orb against Spear is kind of difficult. But matchup wise, other than that, you should be fine if you're going with Red Raptor. Let's see who else. Okay, this may be a hot take, but Dusk I consider to be a top 3 character because literally most of his SIGs you can actually use them as baits, and neutral SIG on Spear is just it's just a free option that you can just throw out of a read, and you can hardly take any punishment for that. And his orb is just pretty much free because neutral sig hits grounded on orb, down sig hits grounded. They have generous hitboxes, and down sig can just spike, and you can just keep throwing that out as an edge guard, no problem. His downfall is kind of like Red Raptor. You kind of have to deal with the bad defense, but other than that, he's really good. You can even just parry with side sigs on both weapons for Dust pretty well if you can just avoid your opponent. and you can secure a kill that way. Both weapons have good reads and good edge guarding potential. So, and honestly, the reason Dusk is here, even though his stats are worse than Tezca and Red Raptor, is because having Spear and Orb together really compensates for the matchup deficiencies. So if you can really take advantage of Dusk, light attack moves and his Ziggs together, and have in-game knowledge that's really fine-tuned, you can really excel with Dusk. Okay. I'm trying to figure out what other characters belong in the top tier. But in the meantime, I'll probably find out other characters that I'm familiar with in correlation to the tier list. So we see Mirage representing Sandstorm representing Mirage a lot. But Mirage is a very difficult character because of the low defense, of course. And having Scythe and Spear, both of them are string heavy with hardly any kill confirms, unless you get a read. So I would honestly put Mirage as a very good pick. She's good, don't get me wrong, but she's not a top tier character though. Sandstorm just has a very good wealth of knowledge when it comes to spacing and reads and follow-up potential. That's why he can really prosper with Mirage. And while we're at it, Orion is also a solid character. But is he a top character? Okay, I put Orion right above Mirage. Better stats than Mirage. Adaptable stats. Slightly better weapons in a way, but also kind of deficient in terms of matchup against bow and axe. But Orion does have very good signature follow-ups because you can go sidelight into Ensig on both weapons as a good follow-up after a read. And the down sigs are equally as useful and neutral, so we'll just put Orion there. Now Vrax. Vrax's Lance, just counting his Lance alone, if you weren't stuck with blasters, he would be up here with the top picks. But since Vrax has mediocre stats, and you have to learn blasters, which is a rather difficult weapon when you're off Lance, I'd say Vrax is probably at the top of the very good picks. It's just simply that you just have to be able to play very well and take advantage of the kit, but you just can't afford to make mistakes because your stats are not good for trading hits at all. But if you can really master the spacing of downlight on Lance, Vrax is almost free though. Like his Sigs carry him really well too. His Sigs are very easy to use. Now Lucian is another well-seen character in the scene. Is he a top pick? Not quite. His stats are good, but they're not top tier stats. Low strength. I'm gonna put Lucian above Vrax actually. Now don't get me wrong, Vrax's Lance alone puts him above everyone else, but Lucian's blasters are actually really good, and his Katars are very good. And his Sigs cover up the kill weakness really well because they're pretty free to throw out most of the time. And they just cover the blind spots of the weapons really well, especially the N-Sigs on both weapons. And N-Sig hitting grounded on blasters for Lucian as well as the Katars' N-Sig hitting grounded is so big that's what propels his placement in the tiers. You can't really go wrong with throwing those N-Sigs out as like a soft read, and if it works out, then it works out, but if it doesn't, then it's still a good try. And honestly, Katars and blasters really compensate each other in terms of matchups better than Vrax with his blasters and Lance. Because really, you'd only lose against Scythe if you're playing Lucian and you can't deal with the matchup. But for Vrax, you struggle against pretty much any character with high strength. So Lucian's always a consistent pick overall. a Suri. Now a Suri is basically Lucian, but with stats more geared towards dexterity in case if you prefer smoother guitars, but in exchange for slightly weaker SIGs. I'd probably put a Suri in between Mirage and Orion. Like, a Suri's really good, but like, the SIGs are not as easy to throw out compared to the rest of the characters I've put on the tier list so far. So for a Suri, you'd have to know how to play neutral and know your options really well to secure kills, but you've got swords, so that really helps with that. But the issue with a Suri is, like, your neutral SIG on sword doesn't really pick up as an anti-air very well. The rest of the kit's good grounded for sword, but you'd have to play against aerial opponents really well with a Suri sword. And for the guitars, the side SIG is really lacking, but the down SIG and neutral SIG carry it. But like, if you can't land the down SIG and you're not near the edge, then you may struggle to kill with a Suri. Especially against floaty people when you're using sword, and against grounded people when you're playing guitars. But but honestly, the kit is just very good in relation to the weapon combination, so that's why it's still a good pick, like a very good pick. And like, if you don't care much for the high dex, like the 7 dex on sword and guitars is good because it makes side light and end light unjumpable and more consistent and stuff like that, as well as helping with neutral light into recovery being less dodgy. But if when in doubt, you can just go strength stance on a Suri as well. Now Ragnir got buffed. His neutral SIG on guitars is now quicker to start, which is very good, and his down SIG on axe is easier to use as well. And for now, we're still developing the tier list. As we go, stuff may get moved around, but Ragnir is a very good pick because his stats are very versatile. Like, similar to Orion's stats, you can modify his stances however you want, and he's really good regardless. His SIGs can take some getting used to because, like, Mirage neutral SIGs, they all hit grounded. Orion neutral SIGs, they all hit grounded. Lucian, they all hit grounded. But Ragnir, you have to use your options wisely because you can't just afford to just throw them out. You have to be calculated. But if you're calculated with Ragnir and you succeed, then it's super rewarding though. Now we gotta include Kaya. She's really good. I mean, she won the last World Championship. Is Kaya a top pick? I would say yes, because Spear and Bow just has such a good neutral game, and she has the stats to just keep her alive so that she can keep winning neutral and incrementally just build a snowball advantage that is hard to overcome. And on top of that, her bow kit is just perfect for the kit. Like, if you want to play defensively, you can use down SIG, but if you want to push for the advantage, you can just use neutral SIG on bow. Her spear is rather sluggish, but once you get used to it, it's a very good spear as well. And Kaya really has no bad matchups other than a very good guitars player, because she's somewhat sluggish when she whiffs for Kaya, but she can handle the damage that guitars can throw out. But it's just that if you can't really give Kaya the room to make those plays and just keep staying on her, then those close range weapons can really do some damage on her, because she's rather sluggish because her signatures other than spear down SIG and her bow SIGs are hitting a short distance ahead. So keeping the pressure on Akaya is really the way to beat Akaya. But like, if you can't get in at all and they're in your head, then good luck fighting Kaya. So mastering the mental game is very good for Kaya. Okay, Mordex. I mean, Mordex is always going to be a very good pick. He's got great stats that can just be fine-tuned to any playstyle. The only issue is that you have to use 2 weapons that are very string-heavy, so that means you'd have to know your follow-ups. I would honestly put him above Vrax, but just behind Lucian because the SIGs for Lucian is just a bit more forgiving to use. But Mordex's Scythe kit is undoubtedly the best Scythe kit. Like, the down SIG for Scythe, you can just send them wherever you want. Side SIG is a massive hitbox and it lasts a decent amount of time, and neutral SIG is just a very good area coverage. His gauntlets are kind of lacking, but if you can work with it, then Mordex is always a solid pick. I mean, all you have to do with Mordex is just overcome the Spear Lance matchup and you're good. Like, you're golden at that point. Hattori. I'd say Hattori is a very good pick, but since her stats are unforgiving for trades, I'd have to put her behind Ragnar, though. Like, are you going to play 9-speed Hattori and have 4 strength and 4 defense? Or are you going to play 7-speed Hattori with 5 defense, 4 1 strength, which is not that much of an improvement? Like, you'd have to win neutral and keep the advantage, or else you might lose a stock out of nowhere, and that's really unforgiving if you're a Hattori player. But her weapons are just fundamentally solid, so you can't go wrong with her as long as you know how to keep your cool and patience when you're trying to build up damage and get kills. Her SIG kit is pretty good, like pretty solid, almost as good as Kaya's SIG kit in relation to her weapons, but the stats really bring her down, so that's why she's here. Now, Ember has some very good weapons, and the combination is pretty solid, but again, the stats really hold her back. So I would put Ember as a very good pick. Katars are insane, Bow is insane, her SIGs are insane, but the fact that you can't afford to trade hits is so much of an unforgiving factor that we're just going to have to put her next to Hattori. And the reason I'm putting her below Hattori, even though her Bow and SIG can hit grounded and all of that, it's just an issue because at least Hattori has Sword, which can confirm kills easily, but Ember's doesn't have confirmed besides its Bow downlight. And there's just times when people are just really cautious about downlight, so it's going to be much more risky getting kills. Okay, Koji. Koji's another consistent character and is very good in terms of signatures, as well as his stats in a way, because they're balanced, but having all that dex can be a waste of potential sometimes. But his weapon combination makes for very good matchups, though. I put Koji... I put Koji right above Vrax. Yeah. He does benefit from having a high dex on his weapons, but it's just like 7 is just kind of overkill when you're going defense stance, otherwise he's base 8 dex. But Koji's weapon combination is just so perfect that he's always going to be a good character no matter what. Like, the skill ceiling for Vrax is probably higher, but for Koji, it's just easier to get started, if you know what I mean. And like compared to Orion, you also have more ways to play the character in terms of counterplay because Bow is very flexible and so is Sword. But like the stats really hold him back, so he's kind of like Lord Vrax, but for Sword and Bow, if you can somewhat understand that. Now Cassidy 9 Dex Hammer is pretty insane, but like other than that, you're really struggling in neutral because having 4 speed for the 9 dex is an issue. Like, Vrax still has 5 speed, so that's not too bad, but casting with 4 speed is an issue. She's probably at the top of viable picks, in my opinion. Like, you can do well with her, but you're going to have to really get used to working with the 4 speed. And alongside with talking about 4 speed, that's where we put Nai as well. She's a viable pick, and she's definitely good, but she's not very good because 4 speed is just a really big handicap you'd have to work around. Okay, where would Taros go? I mean, Taros used to be a menace back then when heavy weapons were in their heyday. But nowadays, Taros is just really good for dealing damage in short bursts and sealing stocks out of nowhere, but then struggles to build up damage if you can't win neutral and space well. So, I'd put him in viable pick, and I'd put him right above Cassidy and Nye simply because he just has better stats overall. His weapon combination is kind of mediocre, but Axe can be played stringy and Hammer can be played as confirm based, so this still works out. And like the NSIGs are just auto gimp buttons, so that's fine. Sidra is probably the best canon character because she's just well rounded in terms of everything, stats, SIGs, everything. And like the anchor with sword down SIG, it's kind of like Taros level of auto gimp button if you know how to use it right. And canon NSIG, you can just throw it out. I put her above the weaker stat characters for sure though. I'd probably consider her to be as an intermediate area for the very good picks here. Like, she's solid like Koji, but it's just that Cannon's base kit is somewhat undertuned compared to the top weapons, so that's why she's not in the powerful picks. But she's definitely a very good pick. Now, Val was really good when gauntlets were a more prominent part of the meta, but now she's just very good, just solid, very good. Like, she's not an overly crazy, but she just has the solid stats to let you adapt. And the weapon combination is not too difficult to work with. Sword pairs up with gauntlets for confirming really well if you can't get the reads. But is she at Koji or Sidra level? Not quite. Because bow and sword really compensate the matchup so well. But Val just has the stats to work with in the matchup, so we're probably just going to put her... We're going to put her ahead of Orion because her SIGs can, especially sword side SIG, like off edge. That's just very good for those early kills. And neutral SIG on gauntlets, even though it's kind of slow, it's almost like the anchor for Sidra if you know how to space it properly. So we're gonna put her right above Orion. Like so, I consider her and Orion to be interchangeable in terms of like the flexible picks, but Val is more close range centered and Orion's more long range centered when it comes to adaptable picks. Okay, now Fate won BCX 2019, but nowadays I'd say she's definitely a very good pick. Her stats are pretty solid. You can adapt it very well. Having high strength on Scythe and Orb doesn't contribute too much, but it's still better than being overloaded on Dex, so she has to be here. Orb got buffed with the sidelight stuns, so you can get more follow-up potential, especially with her confirmed with sidelight Ensig. And you can confirm with sidelight Ensig on Scythe unjumpable, so there's that too, so that's pretty solid. She does struggle against Spear though, kind of like Val. So I'm going to put her right behind Vrax because she does somewhat struggle against Lance too, Spear and Lance. And Orb does compensate for Scythe because you have the confirms off of Sidelight Sarah on Orb, but like the matchups is really the only issue. If you overcome the matchups, Fate can really prosper. Okay, Moonin has Scythe and Bow, so you're probably not going to struggle on matchups very much, but you have to know movement and spacing very well because you don't have that much in strength and defense, so you're going to have to be good at the game. But if you're good at the game, then she's very insane because Scythe and Bow control area so well, and you can literally play her in so many different ways because those two weapons are just so versatile. So I'm going to put her as a powerful pick, but she's not overly powerful because she's just balanced by the fact that you have to know how to play neutral. But if you can play neutral, like her SIGs just compensate really well too. Like downsing on bow hits stacked and you can just throw it out and it's surprisingly hard to punish. And like the scythe kit is kind of like Mordex's scythe kit, but except just not as flashy, but it still functions in a similar way, so that's solid. You know what? Putting Mordex below Moonin sounds weird, but like Bo can just win out so many matchups though. That's why I put her above Mordex for that very reason. Okay. Wushang, gauntlets, and spears. Spear is good, gauntlets are good. I mean, you may struggle against Katars, and you may struggle against bow, but that's about it. Lance might be an issue, but if you know how to space with spear, then you can overcome Lance. His stats are really high dex, but going down to 6 dex is pretty much a good baseline. So we're just gonna put him above Fate in terms of very good. Like the SIGs are very good. So many of them just spike, so that's good. But like Katars into Wushang is such a nightmare for Wushang though. So there's that. Okay, Vector. We got Lance and we got Bow. We know Bow's good. Lance is pretty good. And Vector doesn't have any bad matchups in my opinion. But the issue is his Lance SIGs really require a lot of planning and knowledge to use well. So I'm gonna put him just below Ragnar. Like you can thrive with Vector because his stats are very forgiving, but it's just that you have to work with the SIGs and you have to be calculated. But Axe and Katars are just easier to follow up with, but Lance and Bow are also easier to follow up with, but the SIGs don't mesh as well in comparison to Ragnar's SIGs meshing with his kit. So that's why I'm just going to put them there. Now, Cross is insane in 2s, but in 1s, again, you're going to struggle against Scythe and Katars, but his stats are just insane. You can play his stats however you want. Yeah, we're putting him in front of Asuri. Like Asuri has the stats issue, but Cross has the matchups issue, so we'll put them in the same boat. Like his SIGs can take people out early, but like if they play around that and like they can just play around his dead zones for his weapons, then there's a big issue that you have to resolve there to do well with Cross. Kind of the same issue with Diana because she struggles against close ranged weapons if they get in on her, but then again she can keep people out well. Her stats are balanced like Orion's, but her blaster kit needs to be adapted to. I put her around the same area as Diana, Ragnar, Vector. Like they're good, but they just require some calculation and getting used to thrive well. But don't get me wrong though, Downlight into NSIG on Bow is such a good confirm that can't be understated. Like if Blasters ever thrive in the meta, she's definitely gonna shoot up in the tier list. Okay. Would she be better than Cross? No, because Cross Blasters are easier to use. And he has solid stats, so yeah. Diana right here. Caspian, his SIGs are insane. Both of his weapons are good, but having them together is redundant. But likewise, if you're good offstage, Caspian is insane offstage. And his SIGs have been buffed continuously throughout patches that it can't be ignored that he can just kill very early too. So I'd put him right here in the very good. Like he's not above Ember simply because having a bow along with Katars is such a good complement. But Caspian's SIGs and stats are solid, so I'll have to put him here. Yeah. Rayman, kind of like Mordex, very good stats to work with. Gauntlets and Axe, pretty solid. They can cover each other's matchups. His SIGs are very good and can deny edge and recoveries. Yeah, we're probably going to put him at Sidra level. Is he better than Sidra? Not quite, because Axe can struggle in neutral if your opponent is cautious and not reckless. So we'll put him right there, in front of Vrax and around Sidra Koji level. Okay, Thea. Boomy's been using Thea and he's succeeding despite his very fresh knowledge on her. But her stats is just very unforgiving for trades, kind of like a Tori. But her SIGs are just so free. So I would put her in the same tier as like Koji and Sidra, because it's really just the stats that hold her back. And other than that, she's just very solid. Just like Koji. Nyx. Scythe and Blasters, difficult weapons to master. The SIGs are good, the stats are forgiving. Probably put her right behind Val, but above Orion, because the ceiling potential is probably higher on Nyx than Orion. But the thing is, Val just has easier SIGs that can pick up grounded much more often than Nyx does. But don't get me wrong though, Nyx has good confirms off of D-Light into N-Sig with Blasters and Sidelight N-Sig on Scythe. So if you're not in the mood for a Fate, then go for Nyx, and likewise. Artemis has Lance and Scythe. They cover each other's matchups pretty decently. But her SIGs aren't slide chargeable on some of them. And let's see. Honestly, she has a lot of potential though. I'd put her higher than Thea. Higher than... Bow and Sword, though. That's a better combination than Lance and Scythe. Lance and Scythe, you don't have confirms. So yeah, above Thea, but behind Koji. Like, Thea and Artemis, I consider them to be, like, same power level, in my opinion. We've got a lot of good picks, though. There's hardly any unviable picks. Like, even Underdog is still considered semi-viable. So there's that. Olgrim, best stats in the game. Like, you can't go wrong with Olgrim stats. His weapons are easy. But, like, the issue with Olgrim is that his weapons are probably so often encountered on your way through learning the game that people are probably going to be very accustomed to fighting your signatures and kit, so you just have to outpace the competition. That's my only insight on Olgrim. His Lance Sigs kind of lackluster, but End Sig is good. But Side Sig and Down Sig are pretty bad. Probably put him right there in front of Cross. Like, Orion's just got better frame data on the SIGs. Olgrim's got an amazing axe, but his lance is kind of lacking, so that's why he's below Orion. Okay, Ezio has Sword and Orb. They're both solid weapons. They both have confirms. They both have decent follow-ups. His SIGs are good. His stats are good. But he's just underplayed, which is kind of putting him in unexplored territory. His stats kind of high on Dex, kind of like a Suri. But Sword and Orb are both well-rounded weapons, and you really only struggle against Spear in some cases, and maybe Bow, maybe Katars, but that's kind of situational based on how you play it and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe he's like the Koji for Orb then. Okay. Okay, Sentinel is very underrated. Like, I don't know why no one uses Sentinel. He has good SIGs, good stats, decent weapon combination, but like no one just uses him. He's honestly in Mordex tier. If Hammer becomes prominent, Sentinel can easily overtake Mordex and Lucian in the very good picks. But for now, I consider him to be right here. Like you just can't go wrong with those SIGs. The N6 hit grounded. They cover a decent area. His weapons compensate each other because Hammer can give the killing power that Katar's lacks. You can play off stage with both weapons, so that's just really good. Hmm. Okay, Zariel, another underrated character. Like no one just uses him besides Silver Slayer and Batonic. Okay. He's base 4 speed though, so that is already a hindrance. But you can go to 5, and he has solid SIGs. Does he struggle with matchups? Not quite. He has bow. The bow and gauntlets kind of struggle against a good guitars player. The stats don't allow you to be too flexible though, so we'll put him right there with Wushang and behind Vrax. Like Vrax is the kind of character that has the stuff to overcome the stats and matchups. But the stats is still something to work with, so that's why he's kind of like Vrax is like the benchmark for a character that can overcome their flaws. Okay, Jiro. Sword and Scythe both complement each other well. The SIGs hit hard, but his stats are unforgiving for trades. But having Nair True on Scythe is an asset, but Moonin can achieve that because Moonin can just go Dex Stance and then she'd just be like Jiro. So that's why I'd have to put Jiro much lower than Moonin for sure. His stats are not nearly as friendly. And his SIGs do require some calculation. You can't just throw them out. So I'd put Jiro higher than Caspian, higher than Ember, but weaker than the rest in the very good picks. Like he's good, but like he's just so restricted in his stats that it's not funny. Petra's good because her stats very complement Orb and Gauntlets for getting those early kills off of early reads. But like she really struggles against like certain weapons like Katars or Lance or Spear, depending on how you play. Like that's a really big liability. But if you can overcome that, then she's very, very good. But as of right now, I just consider her to be. The thing is, her weapons inherently let you play flexibly. So we're gonna put Petra above Rayman. Yeah, but behind Sidra because Sidra still has more flexible stats. Okay. Okay, we're really thinning down the characters that are viable right now. A lot of mediocre stats and a lot of mediocre weapons that are left now. Okay, Reno, Orb, and Blasters. Weapon combination, kind of zone based, not very excelling in anything, but you do have confirms on both weapons. The stats kind of stink because kind of low on speed, but a little bit overloaded on Dex. Definitely better than Cross. Better than Orion? Nope. Right behind Orion, but better than Olgrim. The SIGs offer good coverage and distance, but like you just have to really play neutral well because having blasters and orb, they're just really spacey weapons. Okay, let's round out the bow characters. Azoth. Azoth is kind of restricted because you're stuck with base 4 speed, so you have to play the speed stance. but 6 strength and 6 defense is pretty forgiving stats to trade with. The SIGs on bow are kind of hit or miss though, so you'd have to like using the bow SIGs or you won't prosper with Azoth. On the other hand though, his axe is insane though. I'd probably put him above Vector, but behind Ragnir. Simply because Ragnir has the stats flexibility working for him. Okay, Bodvar. Bodvar's just a solid all-rounder kind of character. But like Hammer and Sword together, I mean, they kind of do the same thing. But Sword's better slightly at building up damage, and you can kind of interchangeably use Bodvar, that's the thing, or Bodvar. But it's just that you're gonna struggle against like those diagonal dare kind of characters unless you know how to play footsies. But then again, every character is gonna need that, so Bodvar is pretty solid. His stats are pretty flexible too. So I'm gonna put him. Yeah, we're gonna put him. Let's see. Yeah, just behind Reno, simply because Reno's weapons compensate each other in terms of coverage better. Because like Hammer and Sword have basically the same area coverage. It's just different force values and stuff like that. Okay, Nash. Nash has amazing stats. His SIGs are amazing somewhat too. The weapon combination is okay. You don't have overall coverage, matchup coverage, but the weapons compensate each other somewhat well. So, yeah, I'd say he's around Sidra level. But Hammer's not too great of a weapon. Yeah, Cannon can build up damage better than Hammer. And Hammer excels at killing, but not exactly at building damage. Yeah, we'll put Nash just above Petra, because Spear compensates for Hammer rather well. Bryn's basically Nash, but except with less confirms. So, Axe Ensig is no slouch. Spear Ensig is no slouch, but like the side Sigs are kind of predictable though. Yeah, Bodvar and Bryn kind of interchangeable in my opinion then. We'll put Bryn right above Bodvar, because she does have the speed going for her. Okay. Who else? Yumiko, we got Bo. But the Hammer kit's insane. The stats kind of are unforgiving. But actually the bow SIGs are kind of difficult to use though. Yeah. Right above Reno, but below Orion. Jala, sword and axe, solid weapon combination. The SIGs are pretty good, but the side SIGs are telegraphed, kind of like Bryn's. But she has worse stats than Bryn, so that's a really distracting factor. Slightly worse than Caspian for Jala. But don't get me wrong, though, Jala has so much kill potential that it's insane. Like, those SIGs hit hard. Volkov, his SIGs are cheesy. His stats are really bad, though. His weapon combination, pretty good, but kind of lacking in confirms, but you got great SIGs. So really, it's just stats that's holding you back. But his stats are debatably better than Jala, so we'll put him above Jala. Weapon combination, that's enough to put him above Caspian. Above Ember because of the defense. Not above Jiro though. because the Nair Sayer thing's not as consistent, and it's somewhat hard to win neutral when you have low speed, but your weapons are good in neutral. And Volkov is somewhat unexplored territory since not many people play him too, so we're putting him here for now. Okay, Barraza. Axe is pretty good, but it's slow. His SIGs are amazing though. Like down SIG on blasters and Axe N SIG being the very noticeable ones. His stats, he's base 4 speed though, so you're pretty much forced to go speed stance. But he's not as bad as Volkov though. But like his SIGs aren't nearly as cheesy as Volkov's. So we're just putting him behind Volkov. But like you can understand that they're around the same power level though. You know, like Blasters and Axe is a good combination, but it's just that Blasters and Axe is not as good of a combination compared to Scythe and Axe because Blasters just require more spacing knowledge. Now Lin Fei, the SIGs are amazing. Possibly better than Sidra SIGs, like they're just so fast. But like the Katars are kind of sluggish, that's the issue. But like the Katars are sluggish for the SIGs, but the light attacks are so insane that you probably don't need to worry about it. But her stats are unforgiving for neutral, so like she's like another kind of Vrax tier for like the 9-Zax kind of thing. Okay, Ada. Ada is better than Jala in my opinion because you have that extra speed to make it push to 6, which is better than Jala's 5 speed, and you have 4 defense like Jala. But Spear and Blasters is probably a debatably better weapon combination, even though it's somewhat redundant in terms of coverage. And her Blaster SIGs are kind of mediocre, but overall, the other SIGs in conjunction are just so good that I can't ignore putting her in the very good tier. Like, the fade inside SIGs are just so overwhelming that it's not even funny. And like she got buffed on her spear neutral SIG, so that it's a follow up just like out of jump reads now, so it's perfect. Gonna get a drink real quick. That's a lot of talking. Okay, Isaiah. Isaiah is not nearly as good as Sidra when it comes to being well rounded, but his SIGs are just solid in terms of coverage, though. He does struggle against a lot of matchups, though, so I'd probably put him above Yumiko. Like, just maybe. Maybe. But his SIGs are just so solid, though. But he is a base 4 speed character, so that's also an issue, too. Yeah. He can't be above Cross. No way. He can't be above Asuri. He can't be above Mirage. He can't be above that. Oh, jeez. Yeah. I'd probably just put him above Vector then. But he's still very good, though. Okay. Zol. Solid stats. Weapon combination is okay. His SIGs, gotta take some getting used to. But honestly, insane force character overall. But he is a base 4 speed character, though. Yeah. Probably put him. What's the potential like? Yeah, probably not as good as Isaiah. Not as good as Vector. Like, I put Zol like in Hattori and Jiro area, but for the opposite reasons. He has great trading stats, but like worse neutral. So that's kind of like levels it out in a way. Thor, Orb, and Hammer. Solid weapon combination. great stats. The SIGs need to take some getting used to. Like, you just have to get used to his SIGs. Like, Thor's really underrepresented because of his SIGs, but other than that, he's insane. Would he struggle in any matchups? Maybe just Spear and Lance. Yeah, we'll put him right behind Fate. Because Fate has confirms on both weapons, but Thor really only has his hammer confirms. Honestly, maybe the confirms on Sidelight and Seon or might work now because of the stun. So yeah, there's that. Is he better than Val? Val's more flexible, but he's flexible too. Yeah, I think that's a good placement. Core, another underrated character. He's a base 4 speed character that already puts him a bit lower. His SIGs are pretty solid. But like the weapon combination has inherent matchup weaknesses like spear and guitars and bow though. Yeah. We're putting you above Zol, but below Vector. Like you just have to overcome the matchups. That's literally all there is to it for Core. Like that's like an issue for a lot of characters. It's just either matchups or stats. And like the powerful picks is what sets them apart. Is really just knowing how to play the game well. That's really it. Like you don't have to worry about matchups and stats all too much when you're using the top tier characters on the powerful picks. Okay, Scarlet. We're saving Scarlet for last. That's too biased of a choice. We gotta keep her there. Okay, Roland. Roland, 4 speed base, but he has solid sword sigs. The land sigs need getting used to like Vector, but he's better than Vector. Yeah, we'll put you above Vector, but below Isaiah. Like Roland's is solid, but his lance is just something different, kind of like Vector's. Somewhat easier to use than Vector in a way, but he's slower though, so that's just kind of what levels it out. Thatch, insane sigs, insane force. The weapons compensate each other well, but like you don't have very good anti-airs on Thatch though, so like that's a really big detractor. Yeah, put you, yeah, I put Thatch in like Mirage level. Like it's like glass cannony, mastery and thrive kind of character though. Like his sigs are really the only reason that I put him above Diana because his sigs are just easier to use. But like when it comes to like flexibility and stats, Diana's got you covered. But that force on Thatch's sigs cannot be underestimated though, so that's the only reason I'm putting him above Diana. Onyx, insane stats. The weapon combination is okay. You may struggle in some matchups, but like that's Onyx's issue. You just have to win the matchups like Katars, and that's pretty much it. The SIGs carry the kit. The weapons have good flow charts. Like it's there. And like she's base 5 speed, so you can go 6 speed. So that right there puts her above Vector and Roland. Better than Isaiah because the SIG kit and the stats are better. Can she make it to the second row though? Honestly, she can. Right, pretty solid. Rayman level and Petra level? Honestly, yes. Like she's that good. Like it's another underrated character. Okay, now we're moving on to the Greatsword characters, which surprisingly there isn't a lot of. Like literally, we have 3 Boots characters and 4 Greatsword characters, and it's kind of hilarious because Greatsword's been around for like 3 years now, and we only have 4 characters for Greatsword. Like, what the heck is this? Okay, sword. and Greatsword for Jaehyun. Solid stats. Solid stats, solid SIGs, solid weapon combination. Like, he just sucks because Greatsword just needs getting used to play well. And, like, you have to know so much matchup knowledge. But, like, Sword's a good, backup. I'd probably just put him behind Sidra because Cannon probably is more intuitive to use. But, like, he's close to Sidra level. Mako, a bit too much speed. Like, that's almost unnecessary, but like, if you're playing offstage heavy with guitars and you want Greatsword as a fun weapon to work with, her SIGs are good enough to carry you. So, we're gonna put you... Yeah, her SIGs do need some precision too. Yeah. We're gonna put Mako behind Azoth. Like, she's just held back by Greatsword for Mako. Like, that's it. You have to know how to work with Greatsword, but other than that, very good pick. Okay, Magyar. Magyar is literally the only character I would put in the underdog tier, which is kind of hilarious. Like, he's base 4 speed, he's stuck with Hammer and Greatsword, which are debatably my bottom 3 weapons. So that's going against him, and not only that, his SIG kit is kind of mediocre. Like, I'd call him Magyar the mediocre at this point. Like, you're probably going to get gimped by everyone if you can't even win neutral. The defense doesn't matter if you get gimped. Like, there's just so much going against Magyar. That's why I have to put him in underdog tier. Like, we're probably just going to name this, instead of underdog tier, we're probably just going to call it Magyar. And that's it. Arcadia. Base 4 speed. Base 4 defense. But everything else is pretty good. And Greatsword holds her back slightly. I'd put her same tier as Ada, but slightly worse because you can't go to 6 speed and like you just can't go to like she's just basically Jala stats pretty much, but except you're with Greatsword instead of Axe, but you have Spear. But the D6 carry, so I'll just put her there. The final moment, the Scarlet moment. Okay. Scarlet is definitely in the very good pick, but where? She's base 4 speed, she has Hammer and Lance, which is honestly a decent combination if both weapons were meta, but her weapons are not meta. And her side SIG on Lance got nerfed for no reason. Like, why do you remove the force on a SIG whose sole purpose is to have a random kill option? Like, that's uncalled for, but okay. Her hammer SIGs are debatably my best hammer SIGs in the game, in my opinion. But, like, base 4 speed is such a liability, though. Matchup-wise, you'd probably struggle against Bow and Axe the most. I'd probably put her just behind Zariel. Just above Wushang. Behind Zariel, but above Wushang. That's where I'll put Scarlet. So this is how the tier list turned out. Now we're just going to do a quick rundown to see if anyone needs any movement, moving up and down in the tiers. Yeah, so this is what the tier list looks like, and I hope you were patient enough to hear the explanations for each placement, and I hope you have a good night.